Thank you, Rotarians and guests. Well, it's my pleasure today to introduce Michelle Stanton. She's the founder and CEO of Zone High and a past president of the National Speakers Association here in South Australia. She's an expert in peak performance, emotional mastery and presence, as well as a professional speaker, trainer and executive coach. So she's got a few things on her plate. She's the author of The Timeless World, Debunk Your Fears and Discover Heaven and Earth, and Selling in the Zone, Stress-Free Success in Sales. Some of Michelle's clients include DMG Radio, Bendigo Bank, and Bernie Lewis Home Loans. As you know, Bernie Lewis is a past member of our club. As well as Dean Brogan, the ex-player from down the port there way, and of course Matthew Bode from the Adelaide Crows. This afternoon, Michelle will share with us how winners become champions. Please join me in welcoming Michelle Stanton.
So, who is excited to be here this afternoon? Anybody? Anybody excited at this table? Yeah, you. There you go. Anyone excited over here? You all are? What about over there? Fabulous. Here you go. And finally, anybody excited over here? Okay. So, I've got a secret. I know that there is at least one of you in this room who's going to take everything that you hear for the next 20 minutes, apply it diligently in your life, and become a winner. It could be all of you, so could you please turn to the person next to you and say, I'm a winner, and so are you. Thank you. Only one thing separates a winner from a champion in sport. It's being in the zone. The zone is the peak performance state where your body is relaxed, your mind is calm, and your 5 senses are alive, heightened, and expanded. In this state, you feel peaceful, loving, and joyful. And you perform at your peak without any pressure or stress. So let me illustrate. I'd like you to think back to the Beijing Olympics in 2008 and take yourself to the swimming pool where the high dive event is taking place. So the situation is this. 7 out of the 8 gold medals that are there to be had in these diving events have already gone to the Chinese. And a Chinese diver is standing there waiting to take his final dive, and he's sitting in gold position. So if he nails it, China gets a clean sweep, 8 out of 8 gold medals. So imagine you were that diver standing there, waiting to take that critical dive. What would you be thinking? Yeah, if you're thinking, oh my God, billion people watching, I better not let my country down, I can't afford to do that. I better not bungle this. So if you're thinking those thoughts, what happens to your body? It becomes tense. So let's see how you dive in a tense body.
But now it's Zhou again, and this can wrap up the gold. But it's not the dive he was hoping for. Despite the reaction from the Chinese crowd, that entry left a lot to be desired, and the judges thought as much too. 74.8 is very disappointing.
The pressure got too much for Zhou, and he made a critical, costly error. And what this did was open a very tiny window of opportunity for Matthew Mitchell, the Australian diver who was sitting in silver position. So after Matthew did his dive, a reporter asked him, so what were you thinking, Matthew, as you were standing there waiting to take the dive of your life? And Matthew said, you know what? By the time I arrived in Beijing, I knew that there was really nothing more that I could do to improve my dive. So I told myself to just enjoy the Olympics here in Beijing. So when I was standing there waiting to take that dive, I just told myself to enjoy the moment. So what happens to your body when you're enjoying yourself? It becomes relaxed. So let's have a look at what happens when you dive in a relaxed body.
With his final dive. A brilliant back 2.5 somersault with 2.5 twists in the pike position. A very high degree of difficulty. And the score? We'll have to wait to see. Mitchum certainly likes it. And so do the judges. 112.1, including some perfect 10s. That's enough to give Matthew Mitchum of Australia the gold medal.
So the outcome was that Matthew Mitchum achieved the highest score in that event in the history of the Olympics and brought home gold to Australia. Obviously, Matthew Mitchum was in the zone. So what impacts success? I discovered that there are 3 keys that unlock the door to extraordinary success. So the first of these 3 keys happen to be your purpose. Obviously, you do need to know where you're going in order to get there. And the second key is your process. You need to know what to do and how to do it in order to achieve where you want to go. So those are the 2 keys. And unfortunately, what sports psychologists discovered is that these 2 keys alone only represent or account for 20% of your success. This is not so surprising when you look back at the Beijing Olympics and you see all of the Olympians who turn up in Beijing to compete. Would you agree that their purpose would be pretty common? What would be the purpose? To win gold, yeah. So we say that at the level of purpose, it's a level playing field. They all want the same thing. And when you look at process, knowing what to do and how to do it, would you agree that the Olympians actually know how to dive if they're going to compete over there? Yeah, and quite a few of them will be world class. But at the end of the day, only one person goes home with a gold medal. So what's the difference? What they need is a third key, and that is their state of being. And what is your state of being? It's how you feel while you do what you know to do. How you feel while you're executing your strategy. That is more important and represents a whopping 80% of your success. So let's have a look at how this is relevant to you. Has anyone here ever gotten out of bed on the wrong side? So, I hope it was not this morning. So the alarm goes off and you could groan in bed and you go, oh my God, do I have to get out of bed? It's so cold. And a frown, like, you know, you're frowning because you're not happy. You crawl out of bed, you get to breakfast, you yell at your kids. So if you don't have kids, you yell at your grandkids, if they happen to be there, to hurry up because you need to take them to school. And as you're driving along, all the traffic lights turn red. You're running late now for a meeting and everyone wants to cut in. Yeah. And so when you turn up at work, you're not feeling very good. You're not in a good mood at all. So you frown at everybody you see and they frown right back at you. And everything you touch turns to mud and everyone you see says no thank you to you. Have you ever had a day like that? Yeah. So we say that you were in the zoo. But I'm sure you've also had days where you got out of bed on the right side. So before the alarm clock can go off, your eyes open and a smile greets the day. And you get to breakfast and you're so happy, everybody's in a great mood, you get into your car and as you drive along, all the traffic lights turn green. And even when somebody wants to cut in, you just let them in, and it's all cool. And you arrive at work, and there's a car park waiting for you. Get into the office, and you smile at everybody, and they smile right back at you. And everything you touch that day turns to gold. Everyone you see says yes to you. And even when things don't go according to plan, you know how days like that, sometimes things don't go according to plan, would you agree? On those days, it doesn't matter, because it's like water off a duck's back. You just take it in your stride. Have you ever had days like that? Yeah. So we say you were in the zone. So can you see the difference between the zoo and the zone? Yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it? So were you in the zoo today, or were you in the zone today? Yeah. Interesting. And if you happen to be in the zoo, would it be nice to be able to switch states? It would, wouldn't it? So, unfortunately for us, we have never ever been taught how to be happy, how to feel good. We've only ever been told that happiness is something that is a reward for achievement or a byproduct of something else. So we say, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get that big house, the new car. I'll be happy when my children respect me. I'll be happy when I finish this task, achieve the target at work. I'll be happy when my staff stop gossiping in the lunchroom. But what about now? You know, there's a pub in the south of Queensland. It's got a big sign outside. It says, free beer tomorrow. Yeah. So this is what happens, right? I've seen the sign outside, and I walk into the pub, and I say to the barman, I've come for the free beer, thanks. And the barman, he looks at me and he says, sweetheart, did you read the sign? Go outside and read the sign. It says that the free beer's for tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. So I go, oh, all right. So you head up home, and you have a sleep. You wake up the next morning, and you think about the free beer. Turn up at the pub, and you go, I've come for that free beer, thanks. And the barman, he looks at you and says, sweetheart, sweetheart, go outside and read the sign again. It says the free beer's for tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. So when does tomorrow ever come? Never. So if you are postponing your happiness to tomorrow, you're never going to be happy. So the name of the game is to learn how to be happy now, isn't it? And when is it not now? When is it ever not now? It's always this moment, isn't it? It's always now. So if you knew how to be happy now in one moment, then you will know how to be happy for the rest of your life. Because the idea of thinking, oh my goodness, I've got to be happy forever, is too daunting, isn't it? But if you knew that you only ever needed to know how to be happy in one moment, manage how you feel for one moment only, this one right here and now, then you will know how to be happy for the rest of your life. So that's doable, isn't it? Pretty doable. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I discovered the zone. So, can anyone guess where I might come from what we're wearing? I heard China, Malacca. Any other guesses? Mongolia, pretty close. Tibet is close. Yeah, I come from Korea, South Korea. But you know what? Most of the costumes came from China anyway, originally, so they all look kind of alike. And in case you're wondering, that's me over there in the middle child. So I was born to Korean parents who went through the Korean War. Has anyone here watched the MASH series on TV? MASH? Yeah, cool, thank you. And so now you know what my parents were doing and what they were like at the time. So Mom was the daughter of a feudal lord. So in Korea before the war, they broke up the land into large masses, and it was governed and owned, if you like, by feudal lords. So my mother lived a very privileged life as a feudal princess. Very, very wealthy, very privileged. Unfortunately, the war came, and when it ended, the government decided to abolish the feudal system. And so they took away all the land from all of the feudal lords, and my mom became a pauper in a day. My father was also came from a very wealthy family. His father was a medical practitioner with a huge clinic up in the north of North Korea. Not a very illustrious place to be having a clinic before the war. And so when the war struck, Mom and Dad, my dad and his mom and dad, and all the children fled down south to Seoul with just the clothes on their back. Dad tells me that when he landed in Seoul that he didn't even have shoes. So my father also lost everything in a day. So these two mom and dad, the two paupers, they met, they married, and eventually they had me. And my mother was a very ambitious woman, and she'd say to me, Michelle, you have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, and someone has got to come first. Why not you? And so in my house, coming second was just as good as coming last. You just had to come first, and there were no excuses. And on the other side, my father was a bit different. I can still remember coming home one day with a report book. You know, I'm Korean, but for some of you who know accents, you might have been wondering. I lived in Malaysia for 13 years. So Dad took his family out of Korea, went to Malaysia to live for a while. And in Malaysia, growing up, we had these report books. We had to sit exams on every subject, and we had report books every month. So I remember taking home the report book, giving it to Dad, and I could see his face turning white, and I knew he only ever looked at one mark, the maths mark. And I said, Dad, it's the highest mark in the class. Mom's happy. And my father said, sweetheart, if you're going to compare yourself with turkeys, you are never going to soar with the eagles. You've missed 22 points. I got 78% in maths that day. And Dad said, maths is not like English. It's not subjective. You actually can get 100%, and you didn't. So I grew up to be a competitive perfectionist. Do you know any of those? Have you ever worked with one? Sometimes you look in the mirror and there they appear. But anyway, so in this state of perfectionistic competitiveness, I entered the corporate system and ran up the corporate ladder. So the upside of it is that, yeah, you do quite well. But the downside of it is that as I am putting up this amazing front of, you know what, I'm really good and you really need to know that, I'm actually perfect, and putting up this amazing front, on the inside, there was always this feeling that people are going to find out that I'm a fraud. Because I was never perfect. I was constantly failing to meet whatever it is that I set out to do to its perfection. And so this pressure cooker environment eventually landed me in a hospital bed, and I almost died. This near-death experience had a profound effect in my life. For the very first time ever, I experienced what it felt like to be totally at peace. Having lived all of my life thinking that there was something wrong with me, and that there was something missing, something lacking, and constantly having to chase, for the first time I felt whole. I felt the perfection which goes beyond the material and entered into this amazing space which I call the space of grace. And in the business world, we call that flow, in the zone, high state. And having stayed in this amazing place, and some people call it smelling the roses, this state. You know, you're able to go out and you can feel the breeze on your face. You can feel the sun shining and the warmth of it on your skin. And you can smell the amazing smells around. You are so totally open in the moment, alive, present, right here, feeling good. Unfortunately for me, it lasted 6 months and I got thrown out. You see, I took 6 months sabbatical off work and I went back to work. And then as soon as I got back to work, bang! Out of the zone, it felt like I landed in hell on earth. It was just the same place I was there before, but you know, once you've tasted heaven, hell feels terrible, or earth feels terrible, the way I was living it. And it took me 8 years, during which time the body broke down so badly that I wasn't able to work. So I had 8 years off work, and during this time I went searching for the mechanics of how to experience this amazing state consistently. Because whenever I experienced it during those 8-year period, I'd get well for a while. And then I'd drop out, and then the body will break down and I couldn't do anything. So I was highly motivated to find the answer. And 9 years ago, I discovered the methodology. And as soon as I mastered it and started to apply it in my life, the body stopped bleeding, because that was what it was doing. And I was able to go back to work full time. So it's been 9 years since I've been taking this methodology and teaching it here. In Adelaide, I've been teaching it for 7 years. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about what that is. I know that I've only got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to give you a gift of the tool because I can't explain it to you, so I'm going to give it to you as a gift. So basically what it is that there is between intention of wanting to do something and the action that you take, there's always this little gap for a lot of us. So we might meet somebody at a networking event, and the next morning we want to make a phone call to make time to meet with them, but do we actually make that call? And if you don't feel good, we're in the zoo, the chances are we'll procrastinate or we'll do it poorly. So being in the zone is all about learning how to close that gap. And I've got a little system that I teach, which is to get in the zone in the morning, do some checks during the day, re-energize in the afternoon, connect with people with the heart, and sleep well at night. And today I'm going to give you the first tool to raise your mood. It's called Get in the Zone, and it's available at my website, and you can get to it by zonehigh.com/free, and it's a 5-minute beginner's tool. And so if you wake up in the morning not feeling right, you're feeling like you're in the wrong side of the bed, gotten out like that, if you do this 5-minute tool, it will tune you back into the zone. On your tables, there are a couple of flyers that I've left behind, and this information is on that flyer. So if you're interested in downloading, you might want to take a flyer home. If you need a flyer and you don't have one, I've got a few spare in the front. Okay, so I think that what we might do is finish with that because we haven't got much more time. So I hope that you will use the tool and get into the zone. And so, in conclusion, only one thing separates a winner from a champion at work and in life and in sales. It's being in the zone.
Okay, thank you for that, Michelle. We've got time for a couple of questions. Any big hands come up? No? Oh, well, there we go. Well, that makes it easy for me. and I must admit, let me just wrap up in the context that Michelle's provided us with the knowledge to improve our lives, okay? If we choose to take some. She's provided us some of the tools, and in fact she's given away one of these tools for us to use. But I must admit, if I sit down and I think, yes, there's one thing that I don't do, and myself often enough, and that is relax now, today. And certainly that's absolutely important. And I'll reiterate, yeah, there's the odd brochure also on the table. If you miss out on one, find one on another table and go from there. It reminds me to thank Michelle for her great presentation today, and will you all join me in thanking Michelle?